we talk, as we are already now, talking about this idea of seamless retail. I know that seamless is a word you've heard many, many times. I know you've heard multi-channel and omni-channel, and obviously I can't go through this speech without talking about those things because they're quite interesting. And so what do we mean when we're living in a seamless world? Well, one of the things we're also finding when we look at consumers and we start to listen to consumers is we are seeing a shift from people saying, what can I buy from you, to what can I achieve with you? And I think that is quite interesting in the way the world has changed, because when a shop was just a shop, then it was really just a place you went to buy stuff. Whereas as a retailer and a brand these days who are in the proposition of selling things, this idea of what can I achieve with you is becoming quite important. And we should also never forget that these are customers, these are people we should love and cherish, but we should as well think of them as users. Because I think we've become a society now that is understanding things that are useful, make our lives easier. Whether that's TripAdvisor, whether that's all the apps that we might have on our iPod or iPhone. So the idea that we think in a different way about how we put together shopper journeys, because these are ways in which we can help people use our offer in a better way. So what we've looked at is how do you could therefore connect seamless brands to people, or seamless retailers to people. I'm hoping that this will be one of the things that you take away, hopefully from my talk today and from today, is that quite apart from all the consumer typologies that exist in the world today, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen X, silver foxes, all the ones you've heard about before, we fundamentally believe that there are really only three mind states that exist in the world today when people go shopping. And they are dreaming, exploring, and locating. And think about it yourselves. When you go out shopping, at any different point in the day when you're shopping, you are trying to find something, you're interested in exploring about what that product might do for your life, and you're also dreaming about new things that you might want. So when we looked at this, we're saying that when people are dreaming, they're rather unfocused, they're open to experiences, and they're really open to storytelling. Storytelling is another big thing we should think about. And they're saying to a retailer or a brand, inspire me, entertain me. Now, why are they saying that? Well, they're saying that because since 1991, there's so much more you can do now in terms of YouTube and videos and customer reviews and all that type of things. You can have a wonderful time on the internet. But they're also saying that when they're exploring, I'm open-minded, but now I've decided more what I'm trying to buy, but I want you to engage me now. I want you to reassure me. I want you to teach me. And locating is when they're looking for a specific product or service, and they're basically saying, help me either find you or help me find it. Now, for the last 40 to 50 years, retail has all been about locating. It was all, physical retail was all being about locating, about getting people to the product as quickly as possible. And with a few exceptions, there were very few retailers who were physical retailers who were helping with dreaming and exploring. And it is our contention that this is where the new opportunity exists for retail in the future. But that has to also be balanced in terms of the way one provides those dreaming and exploring opportunities. Because a lot of people, even though the world indulge in idle fantasy, which would be a great proposition for a retailer to help people get excited about new ideas, get excited about cooking, get excited about camping. Who knows? The next point, I think, is the point we were talking about before, about these unique experience signatures. So if people are dreaming and they're exploring and they're locating, we have to find a way of helping them with what we call PhD. The physical ways in which we can do that, the human ways, and the digital ways. And what we've looked at is to say that in the last year, just about every brief that we've received around the world has had this enormous paragraph talking about how the businesses want to become much more digital. Our concern is that whilst that is obviously important, that everybody's running to the other side of the boat, that it's just all going to be digital. Digital isn't bad, but we have to keep it in perspective with all the other things that people are looking for. Because there's some things that physical does that are brilliant, that digital could never do. It's immediate, it's immersive, it's tactile, it's part of the fabric of society. It's where people meet people. There are some things that digital do that physical could never do. It's infinite, it's interactive, it actually is wonderful for telling stories. But in the middle, there are some things that neither of those two things could do well without being empathetic, approachable, even kind. And so what we're saying is that a lot of the future of retail will be PhD, but it will be human rituals empowered physically and digitally. So the three of them have got to work in concert. Because you can replicate physical things. Everybody can have a really nice shiny door and a really amazing ceiling. You can replicate digital. I'm not saying there aren't unique things that people are doing, but human will be the thing for us that's the differentiator that builds and creates the experience signatures. So this is a good example of where physical and human works. This is some work we did a while ago for Tesco, and this is their fish counter. Now, previously, the fishmonger would stand behind the counter, and of course, he'd be friendly and have a conversation. We designed the counter so that there was nowhere for him to hide. He had to stand in front of the counter. He didn't want to, he fought against it, but the minute he came to the front of the counter, he suddenly started picking the fish up and showing people and explaining how the fish worked and filleting the fish, and they were smelling the fish together. He became a superstar. He looked like even more of an expert than he was before, and sales went through the roof because he was selling. He was doing what used to happen in the old days. He was being a wonderful person selling products. And then at the other extreme, this is some work that's just been completed in Shanghai, in Shanghai for a business called Vivid that sells home decoration. This is a 4D simulator. So you actually can design your home, you can walk into this box, you can move the room around, you can pick products up, and it's all 4D simulation. But it only works when you go in with a coach. And the coach, again, is like the fishmonger. He's the person that helps you navigate this rather new, scary world. So there's some interesting thoughts there. So we talked about dreaming, exploring, locating. We did some research about a year ago on what we called the joy of shopping, because we wanted to just make sure that this hypothesis that people enjoy dreaming, exploring, locating was hopefully true. And we looked at people's levels of satisfaction, people's levels of expectation from retail, their participation, and where they like to shop. 7,200 respondents in Brazil, Russia, India, China, UAE, UK, and the USA. The good news is that people still like shopping. It's a human need. It's a fabric of society. Some people find it a chore, but most people really enjoy shopping. And when you actually break it down by country, you can see that China, India, and Brazil love shopping, absolutely love shopping. UK and USA, less so, and we need to look further into the data to understand why they aren't enjoying shopping quite as much. The location, stores are still the most important in people's minds, but we need to watch it very carefully because the web, social media, and even mobile apps are becoming the things that people look at. And again, when you look at it across the world, you can see that a place like China, who's kind of leapfrogged some of the more traditional markets where retail has existed, they are much happier shopping across all the channels. So the role of the store is changing. Locating is still very important. I need to find what I want to buy. We're finding from the research that exploring could be the new differentiator. It could be the way in which a retailer can stand apart from its competition if it's done in both physical, human, and digital ways. And that dreaming, at the moment, in physical retail still seems relatively untapped. When you look at people who talk about having a really happy, joyous shopping experience, you can see that they trend very high across all the factors of dreaming and exploring and locating. When you look at people who've not had a particularly good experience and don't particularly enjoy spending time in a retailer, they all trend much lower. So whilst we weren't able to ask people, do you dream, explore, and locate, we were able to get a sense of people's happiness from shopping and what a retailer or brand could bring to that as an idea. So the whole idea of online, as I started off by saying, is making us hungry for richer experiences. So these are average shoppers who maybe do quite enjoy it, and there's kind of levels of dreaming, exploring, locating. But those people that are multi-channel shoppers, their expectation of dreaming, exploring, locating is elevated much, much higher because they're much more comfortable from going from tablets to phones to whatever. So in our view, almost all shoppers now are multi-channel, as I'm sure you know. And successful brands will be seamless, and they'll understand how physical, human, and digital works in concert. It's how it all works together. Some work that was done for a business in India called Asian Paints, and this is what they look like. They're one of the largest, well, in fact, they are one of the largest sellers of both commercial and domestic paint in India. And they came to us with a very simple proposition, which we need to sell more paint. Please, we just need to sell more paint. So what we need is a new store. And it was like, okay. But then we did a little bit of research and just talked, and actually we found an insight, and the main insight we found was that Indian people are scared of color. So what started off as a brief saying we need to sell more paint became a more interesting proposition around the fact that Indian consumers are scared of colour when it comes to decorating their home. The issue for Asian paints was they were selling lots of white paint, but there's not much margin in white paint. And how can we get people more excited about colour? The store you just saw there was the one in Delhi. The first store that opened was this one in Mumbai. Both those stores don't sell anything. They are simply there to get people to dream and explore the whole potential and future possibilities for them with colour. So this was Mumbai. Now, these stores, of which there are about 100 across the world, are similar to the one you saw right at the beginning of the Asian Paints piece. These have now been updated. There's still elements where you can play and experiment, but you can buy. And then there are 40,000 of these stores that are the real engine of the business. This is where people are buying the product. So that was what they were doing from a physical point of view. From a human point of view, they are doing trend launches. So they're launching new colors, almost like a fashion show. They are doing pop-up events where people can go on and experiment and play with paint. They're actually teaching people in schools about paint and color and decoration. And more importantly, from a human point of view, they're actually funding a whole series of apprenticeships to actually teach young Indians how to actually decorate, because it wasn't a particular trade that existed. So you may buy the paint, but you would have nobody to help you put it on the walls. And then from a digital point of view, there are things like the websites, happy painting guides. They've now created apps, so your smartphone can actually, you can take pictures of any color that you like, and it will automatically go into your own, almost like a Pinterest file within Asian Paints. You can also take light levels in your room, and then they'll tell you about the different ways in which paint and color can affect that. And of course, they've got things like Facebook and social media apps. The reason for showing you that, and hopefully wrapping this up, was to say, if you take this as the new creative matrix about looking at human rituals and new retail rituals, this is a lot of what we're doing, and I would ask you to have a think about it yourselves. Because actually, if you take dreaming, exploring, locating, you take the physical ways, the human ways, and the digital ways of doing things, filling in these boxes, some of which you may already be doing, is a very interesting way of looking at what the new retail proposition might be. And so these are all the things that Asian Paints are doing, that physically and human ways and digital ways that let people dream. These are all the things they're doing that help people to explore. And of course, these are all the things that help people locate. And that becomes in itself a rather interesting matrix when you start to think how all these things start to work together, as opposed to, here's a shelf, what's the brief? So the sales increase came, well, to be fair, in the old days, if we'd taken it from that store to that store, there would have been a sales increase. But I think the fact that this thing came in the middle, and then it was surrounded by these things, like iPad magazine, the digital magazine, that's where the significant increase in sales came, where people actually were educated about color, rather than simply giving a nicer shop to buy a can of paint. So I'm really just saying to you, as a thought, the last couple of thoughts really, is what are you doing yourselves to inspire people who are dreaming, and what is the best way of doing that? What more can you do to engage people who are exploring? And what else can you do to make locating a pleasure? Because locating is still very important. My last question really for you is, if we were to never have another human interaction at retail, what would we be missing? And I think it's just really interesting to think about that as we all suddenly try and run down the road of everything becomes automated and digital. So thank you, and keep dreaming.